Hello, one and all, and welcome to the IGN spoilercast of Death Stranding. If you are trying to avoid Death Stranding spoilers, get out of here.
Go.
Run away.
Go now.
Pretend there are BTs. Just get out. Furthermore, if you would like to see a more concise spoiler cast that really just cuts to the chase and is not just four people yammering on about what happens at the end of the game, we do have an ending explained, which you can go check out. But in the meantime, I'm Max Scoville, and I'm joined by my colleagues Tina Amini,
Hello.
Sam Claiborn, and Mark Medina.
Hello.
And we have all finished Death Stranding.
Yes.
After many hours.
All completed the game.
Yes.
Made our deliveries.
You did it a couple weeks ago. Do you even remember what happened?
I watched our ending explained. A lot happens. There's a lot in there.
Yep.
People have had weird kind of varying reactions. Before we go any further, a bit of housekeeping. None of us reviewed the game for IGN. Tristan Ogilvie, who's based out of Australia, which is 7,000 miles away, gave it
a lot of zip lines.
Yeah, that is quite a hike, but he gave it a 6.8, which a lot of people disagree with, and some people are like, nah, I could see it. But a lot of people are enjoying the game. A lot of us enjoyed the game.
Yeah.
I was sort of, I've gone back and forth about it, but I mean, the point of this is to sort of talk about our experiences.
Yeah.
So, please try not to get too mad at us. Anyway, I want to know what you guys each kind of think of the game. Tina, what was your sort of overall experience?
It definitely takes a long time before you get to the meat of it, both in terms of the gameplay and the story. But I think if you rough it out through about 10 hours of the opening, it gets to a point where you get into this repetition that's really familiar, but you're also seeing a lot of your friends' bridges and zip lines, and that like connectivity experience starts to really come into its own at that point, and I started to really enjoy it at that when it's like actually opened up.
Nice.
The gist of it.
And then it closes into boss fight after boss fight.
That's true. Yeah, it's sort of like an
Which are good.
hourglass.
I think they're good.
Yeah.
But you enjoyed it, right?
I enjoyed it ultimately. I can see a lot of why people would be frustrated with some of what some people have called tedium. But if you're willing to kind of overlook that, or if you're not as bothered by it, it's something where there's a lot to be experienced in the game for sure.
And Sam, what about you?
Yeah, so it's probably my second favorite game of the year after Resident Evil 2, which I loved, and I really enjoyed my time with it. I think the repetition and tedium that the others saw, I just didn't get. I thought that there was a really cool sequence of gameplay. So I liked how you ran for a while, and then you dragged briefly, which I didn't like at all. But you that what is that thing called? The floating thing. But then you drove motorcycles, and then you got to jack a truck, and then you got to build zip lines, and then by the end there was just all boss fights, as I just said. So it's like that progression was really varied and different for me, and I thought that was really cool. I just didn't feel like there was like a slow part to begin with. I loved breaking the game in funny ways. Like I think like that concept of getting up any hill you can with a horse in Skyrim is totally Death Stranding as a game. It's like you can take any vehicle anywhere you want if you put your mind to it. And I don't know, I just like open world games that you can kind of break and explore that way. I think it's really cool.
I think of all the people I've talked to about this, the fact that you got as into it as you did was the biggest surprise to me.
I know. I don't like the narrative side of Kojima stuff too much, but I do really like the idea of like being able to go into a sandbox and mess with it. And I love in Metal Gear games, like those enemy bases are just my favorite gameplay of the last 10 years. I love those so much. In 5, I think 5 was really good for those infiltrations. And this didn't have a lot of infiltration, but it had that. But it still had that like same like there's a lot of ways to do something. So many ways that you can break it a little bit.
You get to tinker with it.
Yes, exactly.
Mess with it. Mark, what about you?
I expected to like it more than I did. That being said, I liked it a lot. If anybody follows me on Twitter or watches me on the Xbox show we have, I can't stop talking about Death Stranding leading up to it. And I was like, I'm going to be enamored with this game from start to finish. And then I found myself, I was like, I kind of wish the story was a little bit better than it is. But I did like the gameplay. I did like seeing other porters, that kind of stuff. That the whole idea of like, I know exactly what you mean with the motorcycle, and it's like you're just bashing up against a rock, and then somehow eventually the game just like
jumps
God
you over
hands it and puts you above the rock, and you're like, yes.
You gotta get on your back wheel. That's the trick.
Yeah.
But we've all ditched vehicles.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, 100%.
That weird like awkward bunny hop the bike.
Yeah. Boing, boing, boing.
Yep. But no, I thought I would be enamored with it. Instead, I really, 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 really liked it.
That's fair.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. I think
Sounds like an 8.6. So the upside down version of
There we go.
Yeah, I would say like the two of us were definitely the most kind of closely tuned in on it pre-launch, which I think probably, I've talked about this, but I think there were things that got spoiled in the trailers leading up to it. I think there were just even visual elements, like little, I mean, you see some of the last bosses. You see moments from the final cutscenes in some of the trailers, but not everybody watches the trailers as kind of as closely as we did.
Yeah.
We also were effectively early adopters. I think we burned through it before anyone else did.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is not a game to be rushed. I think honestly, I kind of spoiled my own experience by like watching too many of the trailers closely and also trying to burn through it. And I still can't figure out exactly what the experience is like. I don't know how much of like with the strand system, how much of what you see in the world is determined by the game, and how much is determined by the actual strand system, like how many other people playing.
Yeah, it's weird because when you log into the game, not log in, when you are playing the game, you see things, and then if you go to the system menu, half the time it tells me I'm not online, and I have to log in.
Yes.
And I'm like, but I'm seeing online zip lines and stuff like that.
They've been loaded in before, but man, if you play offline, that is hard mode.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we will talked about this a lot. If you are playing offline and the servers are down sometimes, you just don't have a bunch of zip lines and private dwellings. What are they called? The safe places, the safe houses. That's what they're called. And those are just there. Like somebody peppered those throughout. And I did a bunch of those. I built as many roads as possible in my game. I did every single road in mine, and they appeared in everybody's game, and I was getting likes like crazy, and it just felt really good. So there's that kind of hump in the middle where people are saying like, oh, you're just doing the same thing over and over again. I suspect that if that's used by people to build and share and talk to people about that, that's a really cool core of the game that's easy to miss.
It's also interesting because when you go from the early sections where you're completely relying on roads and I completely relied on yours, then you get to this like snowy mountainous area, and like that's a completely different experience because you need zip lines to traverse them. So I knew, okay, I'm gonna keep my PCC level 2s on me. I'm gonna make sure I have 4 so I can set up a system
I did the
so
same
I can
thing,
bring myself back also. And I know I'm contributing to friends who I've stranded with as well. So it's like becomes this different game where you're not just a porter, but you're a builder too. And especially with zip lines, you have to specifically think about the topography and like where the geography is going to connect to places, and you can actually on the map, if you rotate your controller, you can see a 3-dimensional vision of it, so you can figure out like I needed like this zip line to be here, but this zip line to be here in order to connect to all these other routes.
It's like in Lord of the Rings, the lighting of the fires across the mountains. It is a math process, and like you can kind of like you really have this geometry to contend with, and you always are like running to the top of a peak and putting your little tuning fork there and like kind of lining it up with the other ones. It feels
like
so
a
satisfying.
grappling hook where if you have one with you and you see something in distance, you're like, I'm not walking. Just head on up. But yeah, like the zip lines are, I think, one of the coolest parts of the whole game, and they get dropped in there fairly late, depending on how you're playing it. But again, this is the sort of weird experimental side of it. This is the social strand system. This is the construction stuff. I want to talk about boss fights, which is something Kojima is known for. He's made some of the coolest boss fight experiences in all of gaming, and there are definitely boss fights in here. I liked some of them, but let's just go around and discuss them. Tina?
Well, they mostly felt like mini bosses because anytime you get sucked under by the BTs, it's like there's a giant cat or something, and you can run away from it. So that doesn't really feel like a proper boss.
I called that I thought that was like just a big enemy.
Yeah, I guess
like
so.
the more
it's
sort
like
of.
But surprisingly, the bosses recycled those big enemies.
Yeah.
Like those ended up being some of the
they're
bosses.
like introductory.
Yeah, when
levels
Higgs
to it.
drops down, he's like, "Are you ready for some action or whatever?" And he gives you that first boss.
Yep.
That was a boss I felt like I'd already fought a few
first
times because it's
Storm,
just a catcher.
Yeah, exactly. But there really only feels like there's maybe 2 proper boss fights. Is that right?
Well, there's the World War ones. Does that count? It's like
Right.
a boss sequence, but it's not. You don't. It's not
and
really
it's
different.
repeated all the time. So
But I know what
really
you're
the
saying
most,
because
like-
there's the Higgs one-on-one fight,
Yeah.
right? And what's the other one?
Well, I would say the giant BT that you actually see early on.
Oh,
because
the
they-
anthropomorphic one,
Yeah, exactly.
the walking one.
The walking one.
Yeah, that's
So if
that's
we're
a total boss fight.
If we're talking about boss fights, I think that like there's basically the 3 versions of Cliff, the 3 different Warzone ones.
Yeah, so you do count those.
Those I consider those boss fights. They're
Yeah.
sort of recycled in different settings.
They're like Kojima style boss fights, like Metal Gear style, where it's a one-on-one
They're like
and
boss
like you're in a new
levels.
area.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are
there-
great.
There is the big anthropomorphic sort of that dude who again was in the second trailer.
Yeah, but
which
he-
I was
he
just
also-
like,
Wait, that was in the trailer?
yes.
It was in the trailer, but also doesn't he make an appearance when he gets all the delivery guys? He like eats one of the delivery guys.
Yeah, that's
right
that was the
early on.
second
That's
trailer.
the same thing.
exactly.
Yeah. So that dude shows up with the big, the hands going every which way. So that was a cool one. I was crazy about the big whale.
Yep.
The whale was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
Now, you fought the whale in its first incarnation when you're crossing the tar belt, right? Isn't that where you fought it?
Yeah, isn't that its only incarnation?
No, because you fight it again when there's a storm at the very end of the game when you're doing your final trek east. At the end of that trek east, well, actually in the middle of it, kind of, you fight that whale,
Wait,
another
you didn't
giant
fight
whale.
him then?
It's a
During,
and
like,
that whale
right
flies
outside
around.
of Capital
Right
Knot
outside of
City?
Capital Knot. Yeah.
When you have to do this sort of like hopscotch across.
Yeah,
the
when
oil,
they're like,
No,
we-
the
we
oil
need you
thing,
to haul your-
we all ran from that whale
Oh
on the
no,
oil
I kicked
thing.
his ass.
Because it makes basically a platforming level for you to get across the
yeah.
tar.
But that's the skippable one, and then
And
there's
you
the
can
non-skippable actual boss fight.
Yeah, so the whale comes back later where you fight it, but maybe
But apparently,
you killed the
if
whale.
Max kills it, you don't have to fight him at
What
the
if
end of
that's
the
true?
game.
It's also possible I was tired and decided to run from the whale later on. I can't recall. But
Wait,
again,
so you didn't fight the whale with the rocket launcher?
I definitely fought the whale
That's
with the rocket
boss
launcher.
battle. Yeah, that's
That was
the boss battle
that
you're
was the
talking
part where I
about.
was like, hell yes.
that one
And
was cool.
Literally the next day, I showed up to work and I think the launch trailer had dropped or something, and I was like,
Oh, it was in
and
that?
it was just like in the thumbnail. It was like auto playing on
Yeah,
Twitter,
yeah.
and I was like, I'm really glad that I
Played
saw
that
this before
before,
because
yeah.
that was one of the few things that really surprised me. But yeah, as for the actual like the other bosses, there was the whole Higgs sequence, which was sort of like a weird. That felt almost like a sort of dumbed down version of the fights with Cliff.
Yeah, and also it's
Yeah.
it's like a big silly meta sequence where there's all these game references thrown out. There's the mention of Mario and Peach, which is like so weird out of nowhere, and it's handled poorly. And then there's the actual fighting game. I mean, it's silly, but there's the fighting game sequence where they have life bars and they're just beating each other up.
I took so many screenshots of it.
Did you really?
Because it's just like smushed, like punched.
Oh, that was
Oh,
funny.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Ooh, that was cool to see that in
Yeah.
engine. And then also they just mentioned game over and game a whole
Yeah.
lot in that time.
There was an odd running theme that I felt like never really stuck the landing. Where like even early on, Deadman's like, he's like, it's gonna be game over, man, and then it played like a little like
Oh,
like,
yeah,
Did the
didn't
little
it?
jingle thing? Yeah.
okay, and then the whole Mario Peach thing, and just I don't know, never be
One,
game over.
Cliff
You know
introducing
what was-
himself as, or not Cliff, Higgs introducing himself as like, it's time for a good old fashioned boss fight.
Yeah.
Puts
Oh,
the
yeah,
gun on his
so
shoulder.
that maybe that was more like a Higgs through line. I was gonna say Heartman introduced a really cool thing where there's you give likes all the time in the game, and I like he like sometimes he would give a thumbs up, and then Sam started giving thumbs up with a little like,
Yeah,
but
you get to see it like in game. He's like, blink.
I love that. And then when he's in a cutscene, you get to look around his room and you get likes for everything you check out. And then
yeah.
when you leave, you screw up his stylus on his turntable and you do like a little record scratch.
That was a wonderfully weird moment.
It subtracts 20 likes and then bounces them back up again when you leave. It's so weird.
I would say to the boss fights, I think my favorite one was the like, maybe not my favorite, but the one I liked a lot was the shooting on the beach with Higgs. And you're kind of like running around the beach and you're using your Ojedic sensor to kind of see where he is, because it's very satisfying to like parry him and see Sam just kind of like kick him and like hit
I got
him
through that
around
whole
and
thing
stuff like
without
that.
knowing about parry. And you can do it in a lot of different ways. So like all my stuff was like a little bit of like running up to him, punching him, and then of course the tying, and then just kicking a whole lot.
Well, because Sam is like,
you grabbed cargo and smacked him in the face with
See,
it.
I didn't even do that.
Oh, because there's like dead cargo.
He would come out and start just like chewing scenery, and I would just like whoop a briefcase at
Yeah,
him.
exactly. Yeah.
there was a place. There was
You
a
guys tied him up,
PlayStation
though,
there for
right?
me.
No, I didn't tie him up.
You never tied
never
him
tied
up?
him up.
Oh, I
He
tied
even
him up a
says like
bunch.
this Strand versus
I know.
gun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
instead
tied
it
him
was
up.
briefcase versus gun.
Wow, did it take a long time to kill him with a briefcase?
No, it was great.
What? See, that's the
That's
kind
my
of
purse, and just
that's the Kojima magic. That's exactly what you're talking about. It's like a sandbox that you can mess with.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah,
cool.
Even in a boss fight.
I'm dying to hear the little things that pop up. Like I was sort of disappointed you couldn't do more peeing on stuff in the middle of things. Like did anyone successfully pee on one of the larger BTs?
Actually,
during-
the
Not a
very
larger one,
end
the
of the
smaller
game was the
ones,
first time I ever peed. Like I just didn't even
Yeah.
do it. And I was like, I should try this out, and it was like 1,000 milliliters, and
Yep.
it took
a long time.
50
A
seconds or something like that.
I would do it every time I had to like build something. It's like building a generator. It's like, I'm like, well, now's a great time.
But if you pee on the BTs, nothing happens, right? Because theoretically, your whatever's like any liquid that your body produces in your DNA should harm them. But like
When-
actively
when,
peeing on them doesn't do anything.
when they're grabbing you,
Yeah.
like if they get you, if you're running away from
Yeah.
from them, if you are outside of it, if you pee on them, they'll kind of scurry away from
Really?
Oh, because I saw footage and I didn't see any
So-
of somebody doing
That's
this.
really
One
funny.
thing that like immediately bothered me, and I realize this sounds juvenile, but like the thing I love about Kojima games is that they reward players who do sort of test boundaries and kind of just like poke around. Like, for instance, in Metal Gear Solid 2, when Pliskin is taking a nap, if you as Raiden go up and point a gun at him, he'll just immediately beat you up. Because it's like, you're not supposed to do that. Don't do that. Or like other weird little things where if you call Mei Ling on the Kodak too many times, she'll be like, stop calling me, and she'll like stick her tongue out and ignore you. Like, little things like that where it's just sort of like it's finding things that players might do while bored and then rewarding them for doing that.
Well, we might still
Yeah.
soon see this
I'm-
stuff come out, hopefully too, because what's the character that gets married?
I was gonna say, you're talking about the spring thing?
Yeah,
Oh, this is
exactly.
so good.
You're supposed to
yeah.
transport her body to her, what becomes her husband.
Yeah, the junk
Junkyard
dealer.
and the chiral artist.
Junkyard, yes, and the chiral artist. So you pick up the chiral artist and you put her in you like
daughter.
weirdly carry her in like a corpse bag
Yeah.
to her soon-to-be husband. But you can take her to the hot springs
Can you
and
take
you
her
guys
to
just
the
take a
incinerator?
bath together.
Maybe.
Take her to the incinerator.
I don't
If
know,
you
I
take her
guess
to the hot
but-
springs, there's a cut scene where you're just both just sitting in the hot springs.
She's there.
And she
that's
doesn't
it.
even
So
have her
that's what-
mummy
that's
suit
what
on.
I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
exactly.
That's
I mean, there is
extremely
the whole
weird,
like
and I love it.
if you stare at his like crotch in
Yes.
the safe house, he'll like punch the camera.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of
guess what
safe room things where he like points at the shower. He's like,
I
Yeah,
guess,
like,
yeah.
I desperately need a
Yeah.
shower.
I guess what I'm getting at here is I'm mad that you couldn't pee just anywhere.
Oh,
I
yeah.
really
yeah.
wanted to just like take a leak in front of like Dead Man and have him be like, Sam, what are you doing? Like Heartman's like, he passes out and you're like, you go pee on his DVDs and he comes back and he's like, what is that? Why is it wet here? But anyway, I have brain problems and I apologize for that. So let's move on. Let's talk about the story a little bit. Let's talk about sort of the flow of this. This was a post-apocalyptic Kojima epic. Tina?
You know what's interesting? Like I like all that. I like how he personified the Big Bang essentially in Amelie. But the thing that I actually was drawn to the most was BB, and I really liked the evolving connection that that Norman Reedus' character had with BB, and especially how Dead Man like also develops a connection. And so it's this idea of them using babies just as tools and then coming to terms with what that means, because BB becomes so much more significant to the main story than you initially even feel. It's like just through the Odradek detecting where BTs are, but really like there's so much significance for Amelie, and Amelie even falls in love with the original BB, which was Sam. So I really like the BB connection, and I feel like it's kind of like the unsung part of the story.
and now that we can spoil it all, I mean, the moment in which Sam sizz Lou the first time
Yeah.
is not in like a structured moment.
It just
he
happens.
just says it,
Yeah.
and then he says it another time, and then the button prompt changes to check on Lou, and then
It just naturally
Dead
develops.
Man is like, oh, you gave him a name?
Yeah.
It's so lovely. And then, of course,
yeah,
the twist at the end with Louise. Like, it's so cool. I love that whole sequence is great.
I remember missing that, and I was like, "Wait, who's Lou? Like, why is Lou giving me likes?" And I was like, "Oh, he calls him Lou now."
Yeah, I mean,
Calls her Lou.
the whole baby
sure.
thing was like, I love that everything that was sort of telegraphed to us and all these trailers were like, what is Death Stranding? This is gonna be so weird and so crazy, but it'll all probably make sense. And then it all made sense contextually, but it still was extremely weird.
That's that's a good way to explain it. It's like the Lost universe and the end of Lost did not make sense still, but the Death Stranding universe, like there's a logic and a backstory, and everything like has a name, and it actually makes sense. Like I understand when I watched the cutscenes, I was like, "What's going on?" I was like, "Oh, that is just explaining this character further, or furthering the plot." Like it was a very simple thing to understand once you had the established lore, and the lore is what my favorite part of this game was. It's new. It's just not from anything. It's not. It's not based on classical, biblical things. It's not like apocalypse stuff. It's not based on any sci-fi thing. It's not based on Tolkien fantasy. It's just its own darn thing.
Well, there are like
You think that's all in there?
Yeah, there's historical elements, there's science behind it, but it's twisted. So it's like, there are World War I, World War II, Vietnam War references, and then there's also like Big Bang and the fact that there are
The mass
these,
extinctions.
mass extinctions. Like they're all based, and they have these touchstones on historical events, and there's even like caveman drawings where they were drawing back to like this is when they experienced their extinction event, but it's just so totally Kojima-ized.
Yeah, I mean,
where it's manipulated into this crazy story.
Kojima is a dude who loves movies. He loves pop culture, and he loves to kind of. I think the mark of a good auteur, or good creator, is somebody who can hide their influences and hide the things they're borrowing from.
Well,
In the same way that Pulp Fiction is a groundbreakingly original film, but then if you like read some Elmore Leonard and watch Rashomon, you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, you
And,
don't want
like,
to be banged over the head with a reference. You want it to be subtle.
So you're saying this is the Family Guy of video games?
I'm saying, no, this is.
You know what Kojima's favorite movie is? Beer Fest. I was texting Max halfway through the game through this because it's like there's totally a Beer Fest moment in this game, and I'm like, hey Max, have you ever seen Beer Fest? Because Kojima has. That was like my favorite. I have it written down here. That was my favorite story moment is when Mama dies, and I'm like, oh, this is so sad. And then it's like she has a twin sister. And it's still played by Margaret Qualley.
It's like, why don't we
and you
just-
know what? By the end of the game, we're just gonna call her Mama now too. I'm like,
No, that
Beer
is like-
Fest.
I mean, I don't want to spoil Beer Fest. We have another video going up about the hit film.
Beer
from
Fest
2007.
spoiler cast is after this
No,
one.
like you're totally right. I'm sure that's popped up in some other corner of fiction as well too. But like,
I'm sure
that is-
it has.
That is also just like such a like twist for sake of a twist kind of thing.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, it's like
There's a couple
really
of those.
sad, and I think it's like I think they keep them separate enough where it still can be sad that Mama died. But to go off what you guys were saying earlier about how like watching the cutscenes, you're like, what is going on? Like I don't understand what's happening. But
I
then
didn't say
it's
that. I
like
said I understood every cutscene.
anyway,
It made total sense.
I didn't. But going through, we've been, especially these 4 people have been working on Death Stranding and like the story explained and the ending explained. And it's like, it all kind of makes a lot more sense now once you really like dive back deep into it. And I definitely liked it a lot more now than I did when it first ended. I was like,
So you're saying on reflection, you've enjoyed it.
yes.
Well, also there are elements in the introductory cutscenes for the game that like. Going back to it, if you watch it, you're like, I get that reference.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be waiting for you on the beach, or the photograph with Amelie and Bridget Strand. Like, there are all these sort of like forecasting elements.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the
They're
game like
Yeah.
expects you to retain everything that's ever happened, so that way when some big reveal happens, you're like, that's why
yeah.
this, and you're like, no, because there's 7
I don't know
hours
if
of
if it
cutscenes.
intends that though, because there's a lot of storytelling that's done where it overwhelms you with exposition and backstory and detail, so you get a sense of the universe and things later don't feel out of place in it. Not necessarily like, oh, like it's always a callback. So I like appreciated that the world was big enough that it was overwhelming at first, and then I got it. Like that's a good way to build a world. You brought up cavemen. Did you notice that there's a lot of stuff about old cave paintings and fossils in the game? One of the things that's really cool is that one of the oldest forms of human art, 40,000 years ago, humans would put dye in their mouths and then blow against a wall and it would make a handprint. And it makes these beautiful red and black handprints in old cave walls. And that's what's all over Sam's bruises. Like that's on his body. That's where that comes from. And then in Heartman's awesome, cool Icelandic palace. He has like a big wall painting that is that cave paintings in those colors.
But it's also the inverse of the BT.
It is that in the handprints too?
Well, the chirality of it all.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that, like the whole chirality thing. That's in one of the first episodes of Breaking Bad. Like the
Yeah, and watching that little
That's
segment
really
is
funny,
like
yeah.
the best way. It's like the hands are identical and yet opposite, and I was like, oh, I understand Death Stranding now.
what did you guys think of Cliff, of Mads Mikkelsen's character?
I thought there were good moments, like gameplay-wise. I thought there were really good moments to cut into the story and intersperse like the pace of how you're playing through it. His performance was pretty good too. I mean, like I definitely noticed a sense of confliction there. Like he's this villain, but he's also like grabbing out for BB, and I love BB too. So how could he be all that bad? And so I felt like I was definitely being led down the path of there's something more going on with Cliff that we're going to find out towards the end. So that was paced out really well for me.
The subtlety of him going for BB, but it not being the BB he knows in his afterlife, but BB is there because Sam is BB, is really interesting because he's kind of like he'll touch the wrong BB, and the BB will kind of look at him and smile, but not really like connect with him.
Oh, BB put BB's hand up.
And did the hand thing, but then like the actual BB is right in front of him, and he doesn't realize it. I love that. Then why did I love it? Because I just said it was subtle. They didn't beat you over the head with it for a long time, and then it gets a little bit beaten.
I mean, it's like we've seen like sort of Kojima be very much like he loves his stars, like he loves to get people out there acting, and I think sometimes he gives them like he gives them dialogue that the actors are like, I don't really know what's happening here.
Can you imagine what that would have been like? Because they deliver their lines pretty darn well for what this game is and how wacky it is. And there's a lot of extra dialogue that you can just skip through. And they just did all that.
I think Matt
It's
stole the
crazy.
show. I think like for just the fact that also that was him, that was his voice and his personality. Whereas with Heartman and Deadman, it was like a voice actor basically voicing another person's skin.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact that we got introduced to Cliff in the first trailer, where he's this like terrifying, army man in the sewer, being like, and then we're like, oh, this guy's super scary and terrifying, and then he pops up and he's like, hey, I got a great bottle of wine. I'll tell you, you're gonna have it someday later. I'll show you everything. We'll go to the moon. You're like, oh, he's actually lovely. And
It's disappointing when those sequences repeated. I was so hoping they would figure out a clever way to not have those
I
repeat.
still maintain they did not repeat. but-
Tina thinks she saw a secret ending to one of them.
I don't remember.
I don't mean
them,
thinks you
I
saw.
don't
Is
remember
that
them
what it was?
ever repeating.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember them repeating. Some of them were just slightly extended. That's why
cool.
I think they seemed like
Yeah.
But I'm kind of the
just
same
started
way. It's
skipping
like
so much. I don't know.
when you watch the second trailer and it's like, okay, Norman Reedus is the good guy, Mads Mikkelsen is the bad guy, and that's just instantly what it is, right? And then it's like, then you see the BB pod stuff, and he ends up being this like really tragic character that I loved a lot. Yeah, he's awesome.
I think Sam was good. I know he's annoyingly not speaking a lot and is kind of one of those silent characters, but it is those moments in the room where he kind of has a little smile on his face, or he's hinting at something that is like, hey, Norman Reedus played this pretty well too.
Yeah,
I like
he
those
uses a lot of
times.
body language, like even him just withdrawing when someone comes
Yeah,
up for a hug,
I like that
or
a
like
lot.
stopping Lochna when she's coming up for a hug.
Oh,
Those kind of
yeah,
moments like really illustrate who he is.
And him
But
plus
it did,
BB are really good too. Every
true.
moment with him
It's
and
true.
BB is like,
Yeah.
how you doing?
I would love to see like behind the scenes stuff about all of the performance capture they did when he
Oh
was
my
in the
gosh.
private room.
Yeah.
Like all the stuff. Where
Oh,
it's like,
yeah.
All right, chug the drink, which later
There's
became Monster, but I swear that's supposed to be beer initially.
Yeah.
Because he gets increasingly rowdy and then like spits at your face. And, like,
There's like they released on release day, they released like this little behind the scenes showing some stuff, and it shows Sam just like, or Norman Reedus like doing the whole like all that stuff, and it just like looks really funny. I'm with you. I kind of want to watch this entire game again just with the mocap, because it's like we've seen like Mads Mikkelsen and Norman Reedus, but like we haven't seen like Léa Seydoux in her mocap outfit, and it's like I really want to get into all that.
How did Del Toro work with his mocap with another person speaking?
Yeah, well, he's just scanned in. Him and
just-
Nicholas Winding Refn are just scanned in.
they put his face on somebody else's body data.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the whole thing is like completely. Like Kojima's obviously he's trying a lot of different stuff in different directions. Like I think it's like a crazy ambitious game to be like it's a new genre of video game, but also here's Academy Award nominees and directors and stuff. And
Even
some of
Lindsay
them-
Wagner, even Amelie, that's not her. That's somebody else. Like that's not Lindsay Wagner. She just scanned in.
Yeah, and then of course there's all the just random cameos of people who pop up. The Conan O'Brien thing was phenomenal.
Oh, I loved it.
That was such a.
I love that. Like it fits with Sam so well because he's just like giving him jokes, and Sam just stares at him, and he's like,
Tough crowd.
okay, like,
I could
what
never
about this
tell,
one?
with all of those NPCs, I could never tell until I connected to them to the Colonel
yeah,
network
yeah.
because they're so like fuzzed out, and I'm like, oh, that's Conan O'Brien. Like,
I totally agree. Like I just couldn't tell at all, and I think several people had played through that in our office and didn't realize it was Conan O'Brien, which is totally understandable. The voice, seriously,
that one I knew.
that was a giveaway, but it's just hard to see.
I hope we get like just random cameo DLC, like just other people pop up.
Yeah,
in there that just-
yeah. Why not?
other random.
Like here's the
Preppers.
new region, and
yeah.
Also, like for a game that's entirely about like reconnecting people with the internet, that has a very active community, like I don't think we know anything about what the post-launch plans
I
are
know.
aside from PC.
Alaska,
I don't know. That would be
Hawaii,
the moon.
the moon.
I want to go to I want to deliver stuff on the moon. That seems like a great time. Anyway, let's talk about the ending a little bit. That's
Yeah.
the whole big thing. That was I would say the bulk of the spoilers was just all of that.
It kind of felt like the bulk of the game because after a certain point, you just have like this really long ending of boss fight, cutscene.
yeah, I'm scrubbing through. I have all 7 hours of cutscenes on a timeline, and I'm like, when you start.
That's the total game, not just the ending.
No, just the every
Whole
cutscene,
game,
and about halfway
cutscenes.
through the timeline that's when the ending starts, and you're like, wow, there's so much because there's just like
So
several
half of all
hours
cutscenes are
endings.
endings.
No, there's like a 3-hour movie at the end.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so basically, okay, so Amelie and Bridget are the same person, and they are an extinction entity who is there to cause the 6th apocalypse, basically, and put an end to all of life on Earth.
Wow, spoilers.
All right, we'll take it from here. Go.
Okay.
But, like, for the last time, because the first 5 extinction events weren't exactly.
Some
the same.
animals got
They
through.
left a
Yeah.
species,
Yeah.
and this one was.
It's unclear why she
Whales,
doesn't want to destroy everything.
cryptobiotes, birds, maybe. I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
We were just talking about this. I think only cryptobiotes and humans are the only living things you see in the game.
No, you see a deer at the beginning. And
Oh, that's
deer.
right.
See
a deer
That's
and
right.
birds.
But you never see a deer again.
And I guess you see
Because
What's
moss.
that deer?
There's
you
lots
see
of moss.
a bird land and get all turned old right in the opening of the game.
yeah.
Turned old.
Turned old.
Oldened?
Oldened.
Oldified.
deer. So, but yeah, so
That poor deer, I forgot.
okay, well, let's
it
stop
didn't
talking
make
about
the
the deer. We're
jump.
talking about the ending, not the very beginning. Everyone's seen the deer. Deer's fine, but so
wasn't fine.
they're trying to bring on the end of the world.
Yeah.
They being 2 women who are in fact the same woman who's in fact no woman at all, but sort of a godlike Big Bang Theory type thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Sam, it turns out to be that original BB that was in all these, that was grown in a lab.
Right.
And Mads was trying to protect and then kidnap. And then there's that weird thing that happens where the baby dies and then gets brought back by Amelie on her beach. It's unclear how the baby makes it to her beach. But when she does that, she seems to make him a repatriate. Because she says, I'm going to send you back, I'm going to lead you back. And like, I suppose she leads him back every time, but sometimes he disappears in the water and goes back himself.
So that's a lot all at once.
Yeah, well, she goes and after he dies, she goes and picks him up. So I would assume that it's her transporting him to her beach, like because she didn't mean to kill him.
Yep.
But then, through the power of hugging, Sam saves the day.
Yep.
He does.
But then also has a gun to maybe shoot her with. But then
she-
Which I did shoot her, and it does nothing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I
It
shot
just
her
fades
30
right through her.
times.
Yeah. There is an alternate
I shot
ending
her
right
7
there
times.
that I don't know if any of us got. I've seen it now where if you just let her walk out into the water, the apocalypse will happen. You
Oh,
just
yeah.
get a game
I did
over
that.
screen.
I got that 3
You get like a
I didn't
continue
get that.
screen, so you just,
Right.
it's not really, I don't really
It's
consider
just
it an
come back to life.
Yeah, it's like,
It's a
hey,
fail
you
state.
didn't do the right thing,
Exactly, it's a
and
fail
so then
state,
it makes
yeah.
you do it again.
But it comes back with you holding the gun. So it's just like, I tried to like shoot her in the face. I tried to shoot her in the necklace. I was
yeah.
just like, what the heck? Because I didn't realize you could put it away. And then you
Also,
go up and you can hug her.
Your buddies prep you for, you know what you have to do if you go over there, and you can't, through the power of your naturally given like speech abilities, which Norman Reedus does not have in
Does
this
not-
game.
yeah, he's not a
If you
convincer.
are unable to convince her, then you're going to have to shoot her, is what they suggest. So I think that's why he points the gun, because he assumes this is what I'm supposed to do, but it doesn't feel right, and then you're supposed to realize like, you know, Amelie and you have this great, big, meaningful connection, and she'll understand your empathy for humanity and your need to go back. He comes from like, you know, a family background where he had a wife and a kid, and he has Lou back at home. So I think she had this like moment of understanding of like, okay, fine, I'll sacrifice myself to a life of solitude, waiting maybe hundreds of thousands of years so that humanity can live on that amount of time.
It's unclear whether there will be another extinction. I don't really know.
It absolutely will.
if
She says it's an inevitability.
It's going to happen, but
So-
it's like hundreds of thousands
Yeah,
of years or something.
and that's why she says, because she doesn't have this concept of time, she says, I didn't think anyone would blame me because I'm just so sick of sitting here waiting. Like, you're gonna die anyway, might as well just be now with dignity, is how she considers it. It's like, you might as well accept your fate and escalate it,
So
rather
then-
than like just sitting around feeling like you're doing anything, contributing to what is an inevitable fate.
So then Sam is stranded, but his friends come save him. And I really like how they kind of show that a very original E3 trailer with like the figures appearing in the sky. That happens one more time, and then he's rescued, and then there's more game. You do another delivery, and that's when there's a lot more like behind the scenesy stuff with Lou, or not with Lou, with BB, Sam, and they show all that stuff. And I really like the last delivery sequence where Heartman is like, hey, you can take this BB out and see what happens. And then I just think that was like a really
The
interesting way
same
to
guy
do it.
who tried to tell you to put him in the incinerator is now telling you to go against direct UCA.
Well, it's because halfway through the game, he
Exactly.
gets a connection
Yeah.
with BB as
Which
well.
is why the BB story is the unsung story.
No, I
give you
I
that.
love the whole like now we're gonna let you see all the cliff parts outside
Yeah.
of
Yeah, that was
you know
great.
you're just watching that whole part again.
But
they're-
before they took BB away from him.
But they're
Yeah.
through Sam's eyes both times, because they're through his eyes as BB
Yeah.
when they're original, and then he's in the scenes, like kind of
Yeah.
watching this go down in that weird flashback series.
But the whole like as far as like the whole ending, the whole like Die Hard Man becoming president and stuff like that, I kind of was like
kind of went over my head. I just
didn't really care about a lot of that. I was just sitting there with the controller, and I was like, if this is the ending, and then the whole like, then the whole like Sam and BB section that like got me. That whole thing where it's like you can take them off, and then it's like you make that, the game comes full circle. Your first like delivery is delivering Bridget to the incinerator, and now you're making that exact same hike to take BB there, and I'm like, you better not put BB in that incinerator, and sure enough, he doesn't, and then obviously the after credit scene of him naming her Louise and all.
I think the game definitely stuck the landing on like a few of the sort of character story arcs and sort of different relationships that we see on screen. And I think some of them, like I don't know, I don't feel like I ever really cared about Die Hardman. Like, and then it's like, and he became president, and I was like,
I think the thing there was like they needed to tie a loop on the whole UCA thing because you spend literally the entire game connecting city hubs to the UCA. So it's like, all right, well, we might as well make that sort of definitive. So it's not like you spent 60 hours doing nothing. And it's also his redemptive moment because he feels so much guilt over shooting his friend and his friend's baby. Even though it was Amelie who had pulled the trigger. So I think it's a moment for him to kind of take a stand for what Bridget / Amelie wasn't doing for the country and finally like put a little tie on that as well. But they didn't spend enough time on him and making me care about him, so I do agree. But I do see storyline-wise why it should be significant.
Coolest mask in the game, I think.
That's
I like
true.
the gold one
but
second.
Masks aren't supposed to be good. You're not supposed to hide behind the mask.
Yeah. Fragile. It was was a good character and a good actor. Like I really liked that role, but like I felt like that really petered out. It's like I'm just gonna start my company again. You want to work for me? I kind of was hoping he would actually. I thought that would have been a cool post game.
There was also this weird moment where they tried to make this like weird romantic triangle thing with like I kept not understanding. Like I know Amelie's, I guess my sister because they're saying that Amelie is Bridget's daughter and I was raised by Bridget, but also there's like a weird romantic tension.
Yeah, like on the beach, all of a sudden, where it's like Amelie versus Fragile, and he's like, we appreciate everything you've done, but we're good from here, and I'm like, oh, this is like awkward all of a sudden because Fragile, like, it was a little. To get to the beach,
weird. Fragile's like, I know you love her. Like you have to really reconnect to your love for Amelie. So it's like, it definitely was a weird, like, it's his sister, but he loves her, but also Fragile's jealous. Yeah. But still, I know this is like a Star Wars thing, but still.
Yeah.
I think as far as like character stuff goes, like by the end of the Metal Gear series, it's like these are characters that we've been kind of kicking around for like 30 years at this point, and they've had a chance to really kind of build up these different, connections, strands, whatever. And in this case, it kind of just comes out swinging with like, here's a bunch of new characters, get to know them, read those emails, listen to those codec calls, and just, they're actors. Look at them go.
The emails, man. The emails are, now that I'm going through all of the emails, man, it's rough because it's like, there is a lot of story stuff buried in those emails that you're just. It's actually somewhat disappointing that it's like you actually learn about Sam's family and you learn about.
That's why I don't read my actual emails.
Like why Higgs has the mask and stuff like that. You actually learn all that information through emails, and you're like,
his name, which is
it's Peter something.
Peter Engel, something like that.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Yeah, I love that there's also like, there's little things that have popped up elsewhere in Kojima games, like the whole final pistol thing with Amelie was totally like the end of Snake Eater.
I was going to ask you about that. Are those references to other... there's very few Metal Gear references that I recognize. There's only one that I can really name.
There's no direct references that I caught, really. I mean, somebody might call me out on that, but like it's all kind of more the way Kojima...
It's just like Kojima's game design.
He likes to iterate on his own ideas. If we want to get really weird about it, I believe there was an audio transmission or tape or whatever in Phantom Pain that was about like, I want to say it was like Ocelot or it was either Miller or Ocelot and the boss showering together or like wrestling in the shower.
Oh, funny, because that shower scene.
And then
happens.
You have a shower scene with the boys, which was very weird. That was a very.
How does BB pee on Heartman?
I forget. He like burst through his pod somehow.
Is there like an evacuation point? Is it like a leak, or like it's a really weird sequence?
I think it's the pod that leaks, right?
Okay,
I think so.
Probably not good.
I can't remember.
Also,
Okay, yeah.
Now that I know what I know about BB too, it's like anatomically difficult. So it must have been the situation of the pod leaking. All right, we've established it.
Okay, it was
and that's really what we came here to do.
Yeah.
Well, he gets sprayed.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah. What was your favorite weirdness, Tina?
Favorite weirdness. I mean, I have a favorite moment that we didn't get to discuss yet.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot to.
There's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
My favorite moment was kind of a gameplay and story element when you're trekking back east so that you can get to the final bosses of the game. And in the process, there's timefall everywhere, and it's more disastrous than ever. And you're like, carrying these cryptobytes to bring to Fragile. And I actually have a weird moment connecting to that. And all of that really changes the environment, and you feel the finality of the game in the process because you've reverted. This is typical Act 3 video game thing where you don't have all your tools anymore. You've reverted just to ladders and anchors. Everything is rapidly getting demolished by timefall. So you basically have a ticking time bomb with your cryptobytes, and then you go and you give the case of almost completely destroyed cryptobytes, in my case, to Fragile. She eats one and pops right back up. When meanwhile, I've been carrying 100 or whatever the max is for cryptobytes in my bag this entire time, and they explain it as, oh, she just had some jet lag. And she needed the cryptobite. So that's my favorite moment leading to a weird moment.
I would eat a large flying tardigrade if that cured jet lag. I would eat one of those.
Yeah, I know.
That turns out jet lag is not enough blood in your body.
There you go.
More blood.
They used to think you had too much blood in your body for every disease. They're got to get that blood out, get the good blood back in.
Science has come a long way. Sam, what about you? What was your favorite just moment?
So I had a moment where I was. First of all, every time you transport a human in that game, it's a weird moment. And the weirdest possible is the first time you wrap a live human up like that, and it's the Kyle artist's daughter that you take back to the junkyard. And you put her on your back. And
it's you can't just walk with me.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And you're going across sand dunes for that, And then there's BTs just everywhere. So I was doing that, and at that point in the game, you have your hematic grenades to destroy them with. And so I was doing that, and I kind of exploded one too close to myself, and then on my back there's this mummy lady just covered in blood. And it was the weirdest thing, and I just kind of stopped, and I was like, what is happening in this game? But it just
Your blood.
Yeah, it was my blood just everywhere, and just big mists of blood everywhere, and that it speckles you all the way down. That was a weird moment.
Did you at any point just totally eat shit while carrying her? Not I know there's weird stuff.
I dropped Mama in a lake, and she was just going down the lake. I'm oh no!
Was there any dialogue that went with that? I
don't remember.
I feel like I might have dreamed that.
No, it was just you're missing cargo, and I was like, oh, let me go grab her. She's just going down this lake.
For some other porter to find.
Yeah, and that's when she was still alive, and she just.
You should have taken her to the hot spring.
I feel like Sam apologizes. I think I
might have.
that might have happened.
So
Because he has all these reactive.
He mutters a lot of stuff.
Yeah, when he drops a bunch of DVD players or whatever, he's like, oh crap, that's coming out of my paycheck.
Yeah.
I definitely dropped the artist lady because the chiral artist is on a platform which is 5 feet off the ground, and there's no way to get off of it. So I just ran off the side and fell, and it's wham, and then just the body rolls off.
You're like, ugh.
Yeah.
I'd say my favorite moment was kind of like Sam was it was just a gameplay moment where I was just in a bad spot. I hadn't been to a safe house forever. I'm covered in blood. I had no weapons, and I get caught by the BTs. And I think this might have been before I even knew that you could run from the catcher.
Yeah, when you discover
so I fight him, and it just takes forever. It's the one by the junk dealer where it's all those abandoned ruins or whatever. And so I'm just running around getting the help from the other porters, and I finally take this thing down. And I have no stamina. I have nothing. And I see a timefall shelter, and I'm just I just go over there, and a porter had upgraded it where there was music playing, and so it was kind of this just weird all this crazy stuff that had just happened, and it was kind of cool to just go, and I just sat down and was just listening to Trigger by Major Lazer, and just was kind of well, that was something.
I'm sure that's what you needed in that moment.
It did. I just needed to just chill after this 15-minute boss battle. I was just just kind of chill, listen to some music, hide in this timefall shelter.
This is a chill game. We had somebody write in saying it's it's a really good podcast game, and it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just said that today. That's really funny.
Totally. No, and it's also one thing that totally blew me away was the first time I came across one of the Horizon Zero Dawn brontosauruses.
Yeah.
That somebody had put up just outside.
It's mind blowing.
I was riding a trike along, and I just kind of went past it, and it would just caught a glimpse of it. It didn't fully render, and I dropped the controller. I was
and you're whoa.
Am I am I gonna fight dinosaur? Like, what is that? Like, I didn't know. And then it was like, oh no, just Herman Hulst put that in there, or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, if you upgrade the Craftsman, he's got Aloy out there. He's got a Watcher and all that stuff. It's super cool.
Good God. Yeah, it's a Kojima game. There's all kinds of weird stuff buried in there. I'm so excited to see like not just what happens to it like post-launch, but what people find in it, like what kind of stuff is hidden away in there. Because like Kojima understands how the internet works and how people will engage with the things he put out there. I mean, PT was not the PT we know and love now. That was not a Silent Hills teaser. That was just a little thing. They were like, surprise, and people picked it apart and they were like, what is this? What is hidden here? So like, what's hidden in Death Stranding? Like, it's a game about connecting.
The dead lady in
players.
PT, her name is Lisa, and Cliff's wife's name was Lisa. What do you know?
Really?
You know, it's so weird.
Mads Mikkelsen was going to play Pyramid.
I'm with you.
Head.
I've been checking Reddit every day, and that's when I saw the Chiral Artist thing. That is like, you can take her to the hot spring, and it's like every day I'm just like noticing something. I saw something else today, that if you go to the hot spring and you take BB, and he'll just be in the pod and he'll be trying to swim.
You learn that
It's
in an
so
email
good.
also.
That's so cute.
Did you guys go in the hot springs? I love them so much.
I never went into one. My entire
One cool
playthrough.
thing about that is that Iceland is famous for its hot springs. This game is just Iceland. I know it's squeezed in the United States, but every single environment in this game is a famous Icelandic environment. It's just, that's what Iceland looks like. And Iceland's all about those like milky, weird hot springs. There's a very famous one called the Blue
Where Low
Lagoon.
Roar is from.
What's that?
Low Roar, the band, is from Iceland.
Oh yeah, and that one Icelandic band is in there.
So,
But Iceland, it's fun.
side note, what is it? Lochne and her sister, whatever her sister's name
Malignant.
is, Malignant.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Those are both names of meteor craters.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, there's all kinds of like weird like little extinction hints in there, like stuff that sort of
Higgs
leads
is
up
like
to
the
it.
Higgs boson.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know what a cryptobiote is? It's an animal or an organism that can enter. It can. I'm going to butcher this. It can enter like a different sort of physiological phase to adapt to an environment. So basically, if like things get too cold, if it gets
So it is
hot,
a tardigrade.
It's like a tardigrade, but
Because those can like solidify into a hard state for like 6 months in a vacuum of space and then be rejuvenated.
yeah, it's effectively a thing that can, sort of survive extinction. It's about adaptability.
Exactly,
The
yeah.
other thing that also does that is brine shrimp,
Oh, okay.
aka sea monkeys.
Yeah.
Which, you have the tardigrades in your little jar on your desk.
And those,
there's this-
they're in a sea monkey
yeah.
container.
Yeah, just right.
There you go.
Like,
Same thing with Fragile's umbrella. Like, there's an email that says this isn't an umbrella. It's like a tool that
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was, but it was like.
or the Odra deck has a origin,
yeah.
right?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a Kafka reference.
Yeah, it's rooted in the Kafka shorts. Like, there's so much stuff to like unpack and dig into, and just like, I mean, I love that part of it. That's been, I think honestly, that was my favorite part of it leading up to it, was trying to sort of like, do that, bulletin board insanity, wireframe.
Trying to figure out what Death Stranding is.
Was anybody right?
No. I mean, like, I don't know. Everyone had like, reductive nonsense theories. Like, I think
Yeah.
at one point I was like, it's going to be like a persistent post-apocalyptic paperboy. And then, kind of,
You were right. You did it.
I'll be like, it'll be like a gritty Yoshi's Island where you have a crying baby and a witch tries to steal it from.
That's pretty accurate too.
Yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. It's somewhere between like the Postman and Interstellar, I guess. Yeah. So final thoughts, everybody.
I thought it was an interesting experience that takes a while to unfold, but is rewarding in the end.
Sam?
I think it's a game that I would recommend to anybody to play when they have the time to play it.
Yeah. It's a game that'll stick with me for a long time. Death Stranding's weird. Before I
So like
worked
3 years, you're gonna forget about it entirely.
Before I worked at IGN, everybody said the best thing about working in the video game industry is going to E3 with the company you work for, right? My first E3 is when Death Stranding got announced, and so it's like it's been this game that has like followed me. Like I did all the rewinds and helped with those, and it's been this like me and you worked on it a bunch leading up to the game, and it's like it's been this game that's like it was weird. Like I went into Target just to take a picture of the case, just because it was like. It is so weird that this game is like in a store that you can just go and buy. And after playing it, I'm like, it's weird. And like I said at the beginning, like I didn't love it as much as I thought I would, but I still liked it a lot. And it's something that I'm gonna think about for a long time.
I'm really glad it exists. I think I had like sky high expectations and it disappointed me, but that doesn't mean that I hate it. Like I'm
Yep.
kind of just excited to see what its legacy is. Now, I'm also I'm happy Kojima made a studio and that he's going to continue making games. Do you think we're going to see a Death Stranding 2, or we're going to see something brand new, or a brand new Social Strand game? Like, what comes next?
Well, since he was so adamant about this being a new genre, I would assume that the Strand kind of genre would be what he would continue into the next project, whether that's Death Stranding 2, which this was supposed to be the final extension, so how could that possibly be, unless it's set on the moon, which would be a different setting entirely. But yeah, I would imagine that general gameplay element, which is what I found most interesting, that connectivity to other players, would be what he would pursue next. I'd love to see it.
I'd love to see a small game. I'd love to see him make a couple of tiny games instead of one big one.
I'm totally with you on that.
More
I
PT than
can't
Death
picture
Stranding.
a Death Stranding 2 where it's another game about the mechanics of Death Stranding.
What about Europe?
The mechanics of Death Stranding are story based. You're reconnecting America. So if you you could just keep reconnecting places, but America's reconnected. So why are you making deliveries now? Kind of deal overall story wise. I get that he's still deliveries need to be made, but do we need a second game for him to be making deliveries? So it's weird to think about Death Stranding 2, but yeah, I'm
would be cool.
interested.
What about
Interested to see.
PT with stranding elements? So the BTs are other players.
I'd like to see a Fragile spinoff. I'd like to see her character more, or maybe,
It's just all fast travel delivery.
or maybe
Maybe
a
she
Cliff
shows up to
spinoff.
clean your house and set your kids straight.
Yeah.
Or a Cliff Die Hardman spinoff, something like that.
Interesting.
And when I say
We just
spinoff,
established we don't want to see a Die Hardman spinoff.
well, if it's Cliff, it's got to have Die Hardman.
Just a
True.
political simulator. Just a skeleton mass the whole
We
time.
need to reconnect America.
I mean, honestly, I'm with Sam on this. I would love to see Kojima do something smaller. I know a lot of people get mad at that. I don't mean smaller it's a 3-hour walking simulator. I mean the same level of Kojima density we're used to, but maybe just I guess more focused, this felt like it had a lot of the trappings of Metal Gear Solid 5 and of what PT might have been. I mean, it had people who were in PT popping up in it, and Del Toro was involved, and then also there's, this whole Social Strand thing. It seems like the kind of pure concept of what that was, along with the delivery side of stuff, was almost like sort of fuddled by the other things in there. Were the ghosts intentionally part of that, or was that kind of to support the story? I mean, the fact that it's not a game about shooting people really, but you still get an arsenal of guns, which felt totally out of Phantom Pain.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Didn't feel like that.
It's an interesting thing. I'm glad that there's a lot to talk about.
Kojima doing Journey or Limbo or something like that, those are games that meant a lot to a lot of people, even though they were smaller in scale, but they still had a lot of meaning, and I think that's what he's good at, and I think that I would encourage. He said, also he's probably going to make a movie before.
Yeah, he said his studio's designed to make a movie.
That will be interesting. But yeah, in the meantime, there's, I'm sure, lots of stuff to unpack from the realms of Death Stranding. And if you get stuck, we have a big, huge guide over on IGN in the Wiki's guides section. Folks, thank you for joining me. Thank you for coming here. And
Thank you.
I feel like we all just really bridged a gap between.
I like the game even more now.
We all have a strand now.
No, I don't know. That's it. You kind of it's the weird adventures we had along the way. We
Exactly.
connect with that. Anyway, thank you for watching, and likes,
Ding.
likes.
Ding. Ding.